Good morning, everyone. My name is Santiago Vera Torres. I'm with WSU. I'm a senior security engineer. And the only person that we're missing is Jake from KU, and he was not be able to be here. He has some stuff to take care of, so sorry, Homer. You're the only one. Now, Wichita State today. So should we start? So I want to start with a few questions. Did you guys anyone have Netflix, an account in Netflix? Everyone? Okay. Do you remember your password for Netflix? So I have to. That's good. Usually I don't have anyone. So why did I ask this question? Because passwords are boring, probably hard to remember. And does anyone know how many accounts in average a person has online these days?
I'd say at least 20.
At least 20? Who say 60? 60? That's closer. Actually, we have about 90 online accounts per person. In average, each person has 90. I don't think I can remember 90 passwords, right? No.
Unless you use the same one.
Exactly, that's not good. So anyone use password manager? I see a lot. Nice. So I just want to say some of the things that I found online from FIDOalliance.org. 80% of data breaches the passwords are the root cause. So that means most of the breaches, the bad actors are stealing passwords, right? So we say people on average has 90 online accounts. People don't like to make passwords, or some people are not good at it. And like Homer said, they use the same password for the same account or for the same application. 51% of passwords are reused. So let's say you use a password for this, and then it's like, oh, let me use that for another one. So we are using more than 50%. We use the same password again and again and again. So you can see the problem there, right? We are using the same passwords, bad actors can get access, and where our account is compromised, right? So on average, the HelpDesk labor cost for a single password reset is about $70 per person. So you can do the math. I'm not good at math, by the way. Just kidding. So let me tell you about a little bit of history. This was the standard in the 80s. You can see there's a copy from our CISO in his office. He has that. He likes to collect those books. That's a brand new book. That was a joke, sorry. That was from the 80s. So this was the first document where they explained how to set up passwords, or it was a password management guideline. The funny thing is the password was not generated by the user. It was machine generated. They used an algorithm. And it's funny, they say their user-friendly password, random characters are hard to remember. It is funny that now we are requiring users to have random characters on the password, and we're going to see why. And what else? 6 characters in length. So roughly, we have about 308 million combinations that we can have. Currently, we have about 159,000 billions combination according to Microsoft requirement for passwords. So we're about 38, 40 years, we're increasing from 308 million to 159,000 billions combinations that we can do that, right? And we still see password being stolen. We still see, so that's not, I mean, we're increasing. I don't know how many combinations we can have in the future, but it seems like it's not working. So, so let's go to my next point. So these are the requirements for Microsoft. However, if you have a password of 8 characters, only with letters, it can be cracked, right? And that could be calculated like instantly. So, and we're talking about 209 billion combinations when we have 8 standard letters, characters, password. So we are seeing that it's easier for hackers or bad actors to be able to crack passwords. So why MFA? We are seeing that that 6% of all total compromise. You can see that from the Identity Theft Resource Center, 3,205 victims over the years, and that represents 6%, and we are seeing that in the education industry. So what do we do to prevent that? So we kind of apply the principle of zero trust. So we're solving problems where we're seeing that remote access is necessary, and also we're seeing more online classes. So it's kind of changing how users are accessing our resources. So we need to have extra layer of security, and also at the same time, we need to stay compliant, and also we need to, we can see that passwords are not enough. So I think that's gonna wrap up with the history.
So Homer, what did you do in the past?
What did we do in the past in Washburn before we had MFA? Mm-hmm. Well, I've only been in my role for about 4 to 5 years now. It's been topsy-turvy. I got there right before the pandemic started. So I learned a lot about the environment, and one of the more disturbing things regarding passwords that I realized or discovered was that we still had a lot of passwords enabled and that were set way before I got there, and they were still only like 6 characters long passwords that had never been changed on accounts. And so I started struggling with whether or not we wanted to maintain a life cycle of resetting and expiring passwords, because during the pandemic we turned that off. We had just started using Duo during the pandemic, and we hadn't really pushed it out to faculty, staff yet, let alone students. But after a couple years, we pushed it out to all faculty, staff, and now this fall we're eventually going to be enforcing it on all students. Up until now, though, all we've been doing for students have been enforcing multi-factor if they've been previously compromised account or if they're a student worker, to kind of align them with our staff policies.
And similar at Wichita State as well, we were more reactive instead of proactive with our student accounts. We would implement Microsoft MFA if they had an account takeover. We had a previously, before we implemented Microsoft self-service password reset, we had a less secure method for handling password resets with a homegrown application. and I'm sure many of us know those typically aren't up to par with those who are developing with Microsoft. And then around July is when we implemented the self-service password reset, which came with its own set of issues, but they were good issues. It taught our users that, hey, your passwords kind of suck, and now you can't use those. And we'll dive a little more into that, I think, after on kind of the requirements of what Microsoft requires for good passwords and their process of determining that. But now we have pushed out across the board for our students Microsoft Authenticator. And Milissa can kind of detail a little more of what that entailed, because as you can imagine, that brought in a lot of calls and a lot of people coming to the help desk. And initially, a setting we had missed is we were forcing users to use Microsoft Authenticator. And I don't remember how long that went on.
I'll let you know when I speak.
Yeah. But it was a little bit of a headache, to say the least. And then part of the self-service password reset process that we also implemented was applying a recovery email outside of like Wichita State. So something, a Gmail account, whatever that might entail, which also did help with the process. But I'll let Milissa detail that a little more.
Sure. As far as implementation goes, Homer, you said fall is when you're looking to implement, is that correct?
For the rest of the students, right, that we
Okay.
haven't already. We've got a good amount of students in there, almost 50% of the students, because they either met the requirement of, or the criteria of they were previously compromised, or they're a student worker.
Okay. Are you using Duo or are you using Microsoft?
We had actually considered using Azure MFA at one point just for the students to help with the licensing costs, because we were only licensing for faculty staff, obviously, and budgeting is difficult. And that changed this year because we have some state funds that we're going to be using to kind of push this through. And also, this is becoming more and more of a cyber insurance recommendation / requirement now. So that's how we're going to be able to budget it going forward. But up until recently, the way we were interpreting our GLBA requirements was that students were out of scope. But it was still on our roadmap to get students under MFA. It was always on my roadmap. We just needed to find a way to fund it.
Okay, well, when Wichita State decided our goal was to do the Microsoft Authenticator, we started with a self-service password reset, and kudos to those of you that are in the help desk here. We lived through that just to open the door to the MFA process a few months later in October, and we thought it was going to be very simplistic. But what we found, we had a lot of international students that go home and come back and they don't keep their phone number. So the phone number that was in Microsoft, we had to change. So we had to make sure that we're verifying it is them that we're changing the information to. So we had a lot of walk-ins, and then unbeknownst to us, Microsoft had kind of buried deep down, they had checked that you must have the Microsoft Authenticator app. And so that also became problematic for international students. And it took us probably between 2 weeks and a month to get that ironed out. So between that time frame, if you didn't have the Authenticator app, no matter how many forms of verification, it would spit it back. And so there were some of our older students, there are a few people that we had to make exceptions for, but we tried not to make that common so everybody could just opt out, because that defeats the purpose of Microsoft Authenticator. So it was a very specific cross-section of people. The other thing that I would say is HelpDesk had to have more access. We had to be able to get into Entra. We had to be able to update the authentication methods because the plan that we had in place, we had to send a ticket to our server team, then wait for them to process that and then get back to the user and let them know, okay, now you can log in, which was problematic because we were in the middle of the semester. And so we needed to have that happen in real time. So we had to work diligently to make that happen. So.
I have one question,
Sure.
actually, if it's okay for the panel to ask questions.
I'll allow it.
To address the international students coming back with new phone numbers, did you consider handing out hardware tokens?
We did consider that, and we did that for those that there were no other options, but we did not have the financial resources to have tokens for everyone.
Okay, so you did give them out for free?
We did.
Okay.
And still do, but Microsoft Authenticator app is what we would prefer.
Right. There were a lot of considerations. I didn't actually finish my answer to your initial question with if we consider how did we go with Duo or did we go with Azure? And we did consider Azure, like I said, but Azure, when we started testing it, it became really clear that it was way different in experience than Duo. And since we already had a lot of students already using Duo too, and considering our lean IT, we didn't think we would be able to support two different services for MFA. And for better or worse, right? I mean, we didn't have students covered yet, but I'm kind of glad that we didn't have to burden that support headache as well. So.
And with Wichita State, we are currently using Duo as well for faculty staff. And then some of our administrators also use. So we've got 2 MFA, Duo and Microsoft.
Oh, so it's not even just that cut and dry. Some of them actually use both.
Yes.
If you're a student employee, you have to.
If you are a student employee, we were previously, before we had pushed out Microsoft Authenticator to all our students, they were getting implemented with Duo MFA as well. So the student employees will have the dual, I can't think of a better way to say, a 2FA? I don't know.
Double MFA?
Double MFA, yeah.
There you go.
Many of us in IT also have that. We also, right now, for all users that have at least iPhone, well, actually, iPhone or Android, you have to load Authenticator app because that's the broker to make sure that you're okay to have your work or school email on your account. And then, so Microsoft is really enforcing the Authenticator app. So most of the faculty staff have it, but they don't have to actively use it. They use it initially and then they just forget it at that point.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
For those people that are basically multi-homed with their multi-factor options, how does that work? Do they get prompted for both, or just one, or one takes over the other? Or?
It depends what they're logging into.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's
It
application
depends.
specific.
We
right?
have conditional access policies set up, depending on some resources versus others. For like members of our admin team, if we're trying to get into, Intra or anything like that, it's going to immediately prompt us for Microsoft Authenticator. Right. And then we have other policies that are going to prompt us for Duo as well. So we do get a double prompt on it. And I will say Duos is much easier because red bad, green good is a lot easier than having to, go in and put in the code and then see your location and allow. Yeah. Yeah. A lot more user friendly.
Right.
So Santi, let's move on to what life is like afterwards. So you can, Homer, you can speak to the portion of how you are living with Duo and how that impacted your users, and then we'll go to Santi.
Oh, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Sure. We did see a marked reduction in some abuse, and it also really highlighted when things were being abused. So Duo logs were one of the main things that I would analyze when I was doing any kind of investigation for any abuse or potential abuse. Trying to think how else I can answer this, but because I drown in the amount of problems that people somehow find when using multi-factor, but and in finding those little pockets in our environment where multi-factor isn't being enforced is interesting, because you'd be like, why is this happening when they have multi-factor? Oh, it's not actually enforced over here. So what we've actually done, though, is we either use EIS for single sign-on, or we use Azure AD. And so thankfully we don't have a whole big long list of applications that we protect with Duo, because most people are just going through either those two different services to authenticate. And that's helped a lot. But in the end, we did still pick and choose, such as our direct deposit login. We made sure that was multi-factor enforced, and everybody's email multi-factor enforced. But that's also given us a different headache, because you got the chicken and egg problem. People get onboarded, but you're required to use MFA to access the email where your new account information is going to be. So trying to find a way to make that a lot more streamlined, I think, is difficult, because right now all we do to require initial access is just a username and password to get enrolled in Duo. And if we can make sure that we use the expiration in the settings that support neglected to tell me about for the last 3 years, that we can lock down those accounts before they get compromised.
So I will recommend that you get an alert when new devices are registered for each user.
Yeah, I have that turned on.
You have that?
I do
Okay,
have that.
good.
Yep.
So we're talking about after implementation. We can see that the SSPR give us robust security on passwords, since complexity has increased, and also the password is checked through a database for common passwords. We didn't have that in our homegrown application in the past, so that's give us more be able to check the passwords that our users are doing it. So also, but however, we still have some problems where users still have issues making passwords, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a regular occurrence that for some reason people kind of have stage fright when it comes to setting a password. They can't seem to think of anything. Their mind goes blank and they need some help. And so, you know, a couple of the things that we use are, hey, do you have a favorite car, your dream car, something like that, or do you have a favorite quote or song lyrics, and can you interchange some symbols and numbers for that, so it looks random but it means something to you and you can easily remember it. Just a few things, and that usually points them in the right direction, and they can typically set a password.
So do you see a decrease on the reduction ATOs right after we implemented?
We did see a decrease. So prior to the implementation of SSPR, it was very regular that we had weekly, we would have probably anywhere from 20 to 50 account takeovers, so accounts would be disabled. And so the reduction of that was maybe 1 or 2. So it has helped.
Okay. So we're talking about maybe 75%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The vast majority of our account takeovers have all been students because that's the biggest population that we have that doesn't have MFA yet. We also saw a major reduction in account takeovers across the board when we disabled basic authentication. So that was another interesting metric.
We are also seeing that it's not phishing resistant, just MFA. So we're seeing that a lot. We are being seeing that bad actors can bypass MFA as well.
Through fatigue?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we can see reply attacks, like made in the middle as well.
Sure.
So those are the things that probably you have to watch out for. And that's where we're seeing currently as well.
Okay.
So what does the future hold for Microsoft? Well, multi-factor authentication.
So for that, I recommend this special publication, NIST 863B. This is kind of like a summary of that document, and it's it's a very long document, but you can go through it and you can see what are the factors of authentication that you want, especially when I mean, it's better to have more factors of authentication, right? The more, the better, I guess. So this is what we are currently doing some research on, and then based on that, we are going to decide what we're going to do next.
Are you considering removing expirations on passwords? Because I think one of the NIST guidelines is also now they're recommending not expiring passwords anymore.
Maybe. So what is the, so talking about the future, we started doing some research on what the industry or the IT industry is doing. So it seems like a lot of the big tech giants are going to passkeys. So I don't know if we're going to have a passwordless feature, but it seems like the implementation is a lot, and we're seeing more people using it. However, there's each company has their own system, so it's not integrated across all systems.
So that's the major, I think, drawback that passkeys has right now. It has seen a lot of uptick. A lot of people are interested in it. I think it makes a lot of sense. Passwords are one of the weakest links that we have right now because of how it requires the user and the human to create it and make it secure. And then they're all, not even including all the side channel attacks that can compromise them anyway or use them or replay them. The big problem that Santi is mentioning is that even though you can use passkeys if you're an Apple user, that doesn't mean you can use the same passkeys in a different ecosystem like Google or Microsoft. And so it becomes a little bit more onerous and it requires a lot more input and from the user. And it's not as seamless as it could be. Right. One of the things that we're hoping to see a little bit more of in the password management space is integration and support for passkeys, so that if you're using a password manager that isn't OS specific or platform specific, then now you can share that same passkey across different ecosystems. But we're not there yet. Everybody's implementing their own implementation of passkeys, and so it's kind of Wild West still. Right. But this is the way to go.
Are you seeing that going to happen maybe in the future?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It's going to come. It's going to come. It is. Passwords are just. That's just old school now. Yeah.
It's funny because when we start talking, you were on the same page about this. So it's not like I say we're going to talk about this, but you are already thinking about this.
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So,
yeah.
And I think we are kind of done right now, so.
We
we're open.
are. Are there any questions? Can you come to the mic?
What was your adoption like with MFA? Like, were people?
I don't know if that's on. Is it on?
Superimposed? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
What was your adoption like with MFA? Like with faculty, student, and staff? Like, were they receptive to it? Were they against it? Like, what was the, and how did you overcome that?
Faculty really don't have to deal with the Microsoft Authenticator app unless they're loading Outlook on their phone. So they're not as impacted. Students,
Yeah.
it was the older students that we had difficulty with.
Mm-hmm.
And the brand new, fresh faces, they are used to this. And so, yes, it's annoying, and they say, oh, well, I don't like doing this, and I may not want this app added to my phone, but they're okay with it.
Well, they're doing it at home anyway, so it's one more, basically.
Agreed.
Over at Washburn, we did a staged deployment to enforce it for all faculty and staff. And we actually had it in our, we have a Smite script that automatically will disable an account, disable all its authentication tokens, session tokens, and immediately put them into a specific group that will enforce MFA going forward for students. So the students will all of a sudden see that they are required to use Duo after they've been compromised, and we've never really gotten any pushback on that because I think they understand this is only going to help them going forward. So.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're handling the maintenance of the databases relative to those students that drop or leave or transfer?
So, as far as I know, the information's there, so if they leave, that doesn't mean that they're not going to want to sign in to get a transcript or just even see, they may still have fees that they need to pay, that type of thing. So they'll still need access. At present, we have not pushed it out for all students. It is current students. And so once it's there, it stays there. It's coming very soon to be pushed out to everybody. So if you are looking to reapply, you attended 10 years ago, this is now the requirement. So realistically, that information stays with Microsoft and is in the cloud. And there have been times that we need to go adjust. As you know, there are seniors in high school that when they're submitting their application, put their high school email address, and then come August, I can't get into that account, so we make adjustments. They can do that themselves. They can make those changes. And so we have the information out there, but we also get calls, okay, I need to add this. So oftentimes what HelpDesk will do is walk them through the process. So in the event they have something that changes, like a telephone number, they can remove it and add it by themselves. They don't need us.
So their MFA will never expire?
No.
At Washburn, we actually built it into our account lifecycle. We do the 80 sync in it from our on-prem 80 to our Duo in the cloud. And so if you're part of a group, you're automatically enrolled or registered. Sorry, you're enrolled, and then you register a device. As they matriculate and they're no longer part of the university, or if we actually have a time frame of a year that will keep an account if they haven't registered for a class recently. So about a year. And in that year, They have all the time to, get their affairs in order usually. We do get some stragglers where I got an email that I'm going to be losing my email account access in 30 days, and then we'll give them some alternatives. Sometimes it requires an in-person visit at our one-stop student shop. But otherwise, I think this has worked pretty well for us. It maintains itself, and we give them plenty of time. That also has made it a little bit difficult in some ways to understand what our licensing levels need to be, but I think we are at a pretty good spot now that Duo doesn't really bother us too much now, so.
Okay, I have a couple different questions. So the first one would be what your verification process is. So let's say a student calls up HelpDesk and says, hey, I lost my phone, I had the authentication app on there, or my phone number can't get texted anymore. How do you know that they are who they say they are, and how are you going to get them back into their account?
That is a great question. We try to verify at least 5 pieces of information. When all users call, we ask for their full name and date of birth so we can identify who we're speaking with. They've already provided their ID number. Oftentimes they have in our system a one-stop question. We'll either ask them their Shocker ID, their card has a specific number to them, that we ask for that number. If we don't have some of those pieces, we'll ask for the data that we can find in Banner to verify that it's them. So we try at least to have 5 forms to verify they are who they say they are. I have had some cases where they were able to do 3 and couldn't do anything else, so we had to let them go. And actually, they hung up. They knew that they'd been had. So we do our due diligence to make sure that happens.
Our help desk at Washburn does something similar, but thank you for reminding me that I've been meaning to verify exactly what those points of data are. So,
you guys also ask us for like some activity with those users as well, so we can also verify where their currently activity and kind of like a history activity of those users.
oh, nice.
And then my second question would be, so I attended a university that was like super out there, progressive, just technology-wise. So back in 2019, they enforced Duo on all students. And I like Duo. I think it's great. Had a great user experience with it. Where I work currently, we don't have any MFA enforced on anyone. And I've been pushing to get Duo. And a lot of the higher-ups are saying, well, we're already paying for Microsoft. We already have SSL with Entra. Why would we buy another product? Is there anything that you'd suggest using there as a reason to spend the money on Duo when they see that, well, we can check the MFA box with something we already own?
That's a good question, because I actually did go down that route to decide, did we really want another one, or did we want to preempt it with the Azure one that we already pay for? I didn't like the experience with Azure MFA, and because we had been Duo shop for a while anyway, I had different considerations there. I didn't want to have 2 different providers, obviously, because of confusion with support. I have a lot of confidence in our help desk, but I think that would have just been onerous, not just on them, but also the user community as well. There's probably ways to streamline Azure MFA, and honestly, any MFA is better than none. And you kind of need to go through the process and see how it looks and see where the potential pitfalls are going to be for your user community. That's all I can really say. I had different reasons, like I said, for not going that route. So.
And there are also some things that Duo does offer that Microsoft does not currently. For example, if you're remoting into a machine and you want to be prompted for multi-factor on that, you can do that with Duo. But Microsoft does not currently have a process or an implementation for you to do so.
Also, I should say this too. In just working with Duo for many years now, it's still a leader in the space for a reason, I think. So take that as you will as well.
Now it's your turn.
Third time's a charm. We are getting ready to move away from Okta and implement the Microsoft MFA. Our biggest question right now is we have a large presence in correctional facilities. They have zero access to a phone, and they will not be able to use the Authenticator app for obvious reasons. You said that there's a way in there that you can exempt specific users from doing MFA, or is there an option for a security question or something
Security
like that?
key.
Hardware token, you mean? Yeah.
A hardware
you could do that.
token.
That's offline.
A hardware token? Okay, so like for the labs that we have set up in there and pre-approved, you could get those? Okay.
Yeah.
And then the second part was, well, that would work for the other part too then. Because we do have a couple of older employees that they only have a flip phone, and they are very adamant they are not going to get into the smartphone business. So we could just authenticate through their machine then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can do, you should be able to do a voice call or an SMS as well.
Yes, you can get a text message. So most of them still have a text. They may not have a smartphone, but they can
Okay,
get a
you can
text
still
and
get
get
a text
a
option.
verification number.
Gotcha.
But we should probably mention also that that's also a telephony method of authentication of multi-factor that is known to be abused and is insecure. Most universities I know of, including ours, is deprecating it. So we're in the future, near future, we're no longer going to support SMS methods or phone calls.
A hardware token would
That hardware token would
be
help
a better
there.
way to go, for sure.
Thank you.
And let's get this last question. I know we're keeping you a little bit late. Thank you for staying.
My question is, how early in the admission process are you planning on requiring enrollment in Duo?
For Duo, that's for our faculty staff. So for
MFA in general.
MFA, it would be initially, so with the self-service password reset, they would already have that alternate email, and then it would say, we need more information. And at that point, it will ask them for a phone number, and that would at least get them that two-factor.
So it'd be at the admit, when they.
It would.
Okay.
Yeah.
From Washburn, for Washburn, for faculty, staff, and students that do have Duo already, we require it immediately. So it does require a lot of hand-holding up front. Now, as we look towards the fall to onboard thousands of more users, our students, we're going to be relying on using that automatic expiration, I think. That's what we're looking at right now. I needed some time-based method to be able to lock it down after a certain point if the account hasn't been claimed. And that's the best that we can do, I think, right now. So.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you coming to join us.